to it here. So we're going through the Gospel of Mark, and we finished with Jesus calming the storm, right? We talked about that. Did I leave any of that on the table? I don't think so. So to kind of catch everyone up to where we are, we have the parable of the sower, which has God is throwing out different seeds on the soils, and there are bad soils, and then there are also good soils, and I think you kind of walk away feeling from that parable of the sower of like, with two things with the parable of the sower. One of them is it's a decent explanation of how people deal with faith. Like some people grab a hold of it really fast and then fall away. Some people don't. Like, just quick story time. I remember when I was in Arkansas, I went to someone was doing a fundraiser to go on a mission trip, and so they were we went over to the house and threw some dollars at it and all that stuff. But they found out I was a pastor, and one guy at the party said, "Man, well, you're not one of those weird pastors. You just making a joke that you guys don't like baptize babies or anything like that, right?" And I went, "Well, actually," and that then incited quite the controversy at the party, and so I had people around me. Most people didn't care. The one guy had asked a question. He was asking some honest questions. But what I thought was extremely interesting is the person that I was getting the most hassle from. And I'm older now. I would have just walked away, but I kept going with it. Was this one lady, girl, like something like that, like 20-year-old, something like that, who had just come to faith like months before. And so she was very righteous, and had just come to faith just months before, and she was just hammering me, like, no, that's wrong. You can't do, like all that stuff. And I was like trying to be kind about it, but I'm like, I've got 8 years of formal education under my belt. that's I know it probably doesn't mean anything to you. I do this for a living as a professional capacity. And I was trying to help her see our point of view, but it kind of makes me wonder when I think about the people who get the soil that come up really quickly and then fade away. I kind of wonder where she is now. And so I think it's a good explanation of how people kind of come up in things. And then the other one is there's this other underlying current that says that we kind of have to be good soil. It's like, hey, you better be good soil. And what changed my outlook on that is one of my very good friends was sitting on our couch one day, and she said, "Well, what if you're just bad soil?" And I suddenly looked at that parable through her eyes, and that parable had no good news in it for her. There was no good news in it. And I was like, well, how many other people are reading this? And I started kind of looking at it through those eyes, and I was like, oh, there isn't a lot of good news in this. I'm like, then why is this being told? Where is the good news? And I allowed myself to start looking around the scriptures at it, and I was like, well, the good news is just surrounding it. It's there. And so I think the Jewish scriptures they're so, they want you to wrestle with them. We've lost some of that in our Western Christianity, where it's just like, oh, I just got to accept it and all that stuff. Like, Israel means wrestles with God, right? And I think the scriptures are meant to be contended with and wrestled with and all that. And I think that's some of what we're doing here, where it's not just like an encyclopedia entry about this is the way to Jesus, right? That's not what it is. It's more of a give and take in a relationship and all of that stuff. So yeah, so I think that's what we're seeing here. So we get through it and we see all the lamps on the stands. We're seeing like what you do when you have like good news kind of in your heart, like in the mustard seed. Then we see Jesus calming the storm. And I really walk away from the calming of the storm with this sense of, oh man, the water is bad news. Like the water is where evil comes from. The beast in Revelation comes from the water. Leviathan lives in the water. Like all these things before the creation of everything, there were waters over it before God tamed the chaos of the waters. And so then Jesus, who's asleep on a cushion, which sounds like Jonah, they finally wake him and he calms the storm. And I think that is evidence of Jesus turning bad soil into good. So let's continue on now. So we're going to be in chapter 5. And I'm going to read this whole section, 1 through 20, and then we'll kind of break down each section, but I just kind of want to get the whole story out. This is I don't know, this whole section is some of my favorite stuff. And so here we go. Let me see, what's the words right after? So the last verse, I'm just going to read that from chapter 4. They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." And they went across the lake. Do you notice how fast that was? Notice how fast that was. There was no break. There's no like Jesus went home to Christmas to his family or something like that, right? They didn't even make any fish or anything. And they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. We're talking about the Gentiles, all right? We got Gentile people going on here. And when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. And this man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. No one could tie him down. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day amongst the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Okay, so Jesus had already tried to cast him out. And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. And a large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside, and the demons begged Jesus, send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." And he gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. And the herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake where they drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside, and the people went out to see what happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people, what had happened, and the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. And Jesus was getting into the boat. The man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. And Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them what the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell all the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. Cool story. So before we kind of start going through the story, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of stuff that if you were a first century Jew reading this, you would just automatically get. And so we're going to try to get into some of that here in a second. But what parts of the story kind of stand out to you, just at kind of a first reading that you think is kind of interesting?
The people weren't thrilled that he cured the man, but that messed up their livestock.
So they killed all the pigs and they weren't too thrilled about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had already tried to basically kill the guy, right? Like they were trying to tie him up, just like they're done with him already. So who cares if he heals him? Like that's the yeah. So what else? Anything else kind of?
I think that it's very interesting that the evil went into the pigs, and then the pigs went into the water.
Okay, yeah. So they go into the water. That's a good good thinking there. That's a good thinking there. They kind of return to the water almost. That's interesting. I hadn't actually made that connection before. That's good. That's good. So we'll remind me of that when we kind of get to it again. What else? Did anything else key in to people?
That's
Just the fact that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ed.
Just the fact that the evil spirit recognized that Jesus is the Son of the Most High God.
Yeah. So, and that's calling back to what we saw a few chapters ago. Remember when we're kind of establishing who Jesus is, and everyone is recognizing, even the evil spirits. So it's like further clarifying that this Jesus is special, and not like how you tell your grandkids they're special. No, I'm kidding. Was there anything else? Was there anything else? That's great. Okay, so that's right at the end. Gloria just said, "Why doesn't he let the man go with him?" Like that's a great. That's from the beginning. I wanted you guys to question. It's like, why? We expect people to be followers of Jesus, right? And he wants to be, and Jesus is like, "No, sorry, buddy." Right? Like that's, So yeah, we'll get into that. That's a really good. We got to make sure we save time for that.
The man was a Gentile, though, wasn't he?
He is a Gentile. He's mudblood for the Harry Potter
So
thing.
he would not have been welcome.
So but he's hanging out with Jesus. Jesus is already hanging out with the people that aren't welcome.
No, I'm not talking about Jesus. I'm talking about
like him going back into the Jewish regions and all that. Yeah. It's
Gentile.
And that could be some of it. So all right, so let's get into this. So they went into the lake, so that lake that you just calmed, and they go to the other side, and this is a Gentile region. Like this is a it's just Gentile through and through. We're going to get more into that in a second. So a man comes up who's just filled with demons, right? Filled with demons. And these people have tried to throw him away. We've kind of talked about this already. They tried to throw him away, and he doesn't even stay in his chains. So he's got like hyper strength. You think of like the Exorcist movie and like everything that Linda Blair could do in that movie and all that stuff. Like that's, it's hyper strength and all that stuff. And it's also interesting that he's hanging around the dead constantly. And what that tells me is that those feelings around cemeteries that we still have, all that stuff is probably existed back then too. And so we're seeing that this guy's most at home with all these demons in him, all around the dead and kind of the creepy places on the earth. I think like you can imagine how this story would be being told, right? We're getting a picture of what this guy is. He's filled with all these demons. Like, like you're sitting around with the campfire, telling ghost stories, and it's always around the middle of the woods, an old cemetery that no one knows about anymore, stuff like that. So just picture that. You're getting into that headspace. This guy is bad news. And the bad news comes up and tells Jesus that you are the Son of God. Another clarification about who God is. He's God Most High. And I think it's interesting how the scriptures tell the story, that he comes up to the story at first, but then it almost backtracks a little bit, because it says, for Jesus had told the demons to go, right? To be exorcised, right? I love saying it like that. I say it as a joke. Let's see, where is that? Let's see. Verse 8. There it is. For Jesus had said to them, come out of this man. So he shouted at the top of his voice, what do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, do not torture me, for, and it goes back, Jesus had already said to him, come out of this man, you impure spirit. And they're like begging, no, don't tell us to do that. Right? And then Jesus was like, well, what's your name? And they said, and then here is a key in how we need to start reading this, because this is incredibly important what his name is. His name is Legion, all right? So his name is Legion. And that is, if you were a first century Jew who is well aware of Roman power and Roman domination and Roman everything, that would have cued in, right? Like if you were, if you're, it just left me. It was a great example. If you were Japanese, what's the Japanese like mob type of thing called? I can't remember. What? No, it's not samurai, but that's, or like the Gestapo, just any of these things. Each culture has their own kind of power and baddies, right? And in Roman culture, that would have been legion. That would have been a legion of Roman armies that comes in, that shows inexpressible power by numbers, that if you try to go against them, they're going to defeat you, which is already what we're seeing, because this guy is overpowering everyone. It's almost like it's a parable inside of a story, right? That this guy's own life is showing how powerful Rome is. And remember, they are also in the Gentile region. And what was common in the Gentile region, especially in that day and time, was emperor worship. Emperor, so worshiping Caesar, worshiping empire, and many of you are like, oh, man, who in the world would do that? Like, have you seen the last few years? These emperors would be worshipped by these people, and they would make sacrifices to the emperor, right? Make the sacrifice to the emperor. Now, what are they using for a sacrifice to the emperor? What do you think? What does the story tell us? Pigs. They would sacrifice pigs. So when he comes up and says, Legion, for we are many, it automatically locks the first century Jew's brain into thinking about emperor things, and the power of the emperor. And we're in this region that everyone would have known would have been practicing emperor worship, right? And so they're doing all this stuff, and then and the demons are like, well, if you're going to send us something, send us into the pigs, which also, according to the Jews, are dirty animals and disgusting. And then they go in there. The pigs come out there and fly down into the water, which that's a very interesting connection, Cheryl, that they go into the water that Jesus just calmed. Like Jesus just calmed, and so they go into the water, go back into the chaos, almost thinking it kind of in those ways. And so they go down in there, but these pigs would have been used for sacrificing in the thing. So most likely, they could have been, the analogy still works. So the general thing that's always been the thing is that this was probably the town's livelihood, these pigs, which is very true. But I think it goes even beyond just their town livelihood. You have messed with their religion.
Mhm.
You have messed with their object of veneration and their ability to celebrate the object of veneration. Thoughts about how Jesus cleanses the temple should be coming onto our heads, right? Also, what needs to be understood too, 100 years before this, you had the Maccabean Revolt, right? Something I talk about constantly, because that is, everyone wants to make Jesus into Judas Maccabeus, who's going to come in, who saved Alexander the Great. The Greeks were in charge of and they were making sacrifices to Zeus in the temple at that time. And they were using pigs to sacrifice to Zeus in the Jewish temple. Okay? So Judas Maccabeus is he drives them out and he cleanses the temple. This is actually timely that we're going through this right now. Cleanses the temple, and when he cleanses the temple, which sounds like Jesus cleansing the temple of all the people selling and all that stuff. When he cleanses the temple, he only has enough oil to light the menorah for one night. But the nights lasted, 10? So that's Hanukkah. That's Hanukkah. Hanukkah is actually our Palm Sunday. That's why we don't celebrate Hanukkah. Hanukkah, Jesus celebrated the Festival of Lights. And the reason why we don't do it is because we celebrate Palm Sunday. And so with the triumphal entry. But so the reason why I'm saying that is that all of these Gentiles out here are making sacrifices to the emperor using pigs, right? Using pigs, and to be thinking about the power of the overarching people above them with oh man, I'm losing my words. They're thinking about the power of the overarching thing. So the pigs are connected to that Judas Maccabeus moment, and these people there, now that their livelihood, their religion has been messed with, they are super upset about it, right? Because everything has been taken from them. So, and the Jewish audiences who had been reading about Jesus, they're getting all this symbolic sense from that Maccabean revolt, even in this. This has threads that sound similar to that. And the Maccabean revolt is about the Messiah coming forward in power, is what that's a symbol of, and how people would view it in that day. Super cool stuff. Super cool stuff. We just said a lot there. Does anyone have any thoughts about that, or questions, or anything like that? So Gloria just asked, why did they take the Maccabees part of the Bible out? I don't think so. I have my suspicions. Luther didn't like it. Most of our Protestant Bible is in there. I have a Catholic, English. You look at the Bibles that are in the Catholic stuff. They have most of the Apocrypha in there. I think. I don't know if I can explain this well. I don't even explain why I think this is funny, but there's a popular Lutheran meme that kind of goes around Lutheran academic circles that has Luther, and he's sitting and he's sweating, and it says sola scriptura, and then right underneath it, he's crossing out the Apocrypha. And so I think that's hilarious. But that's when you read the Maccabees, which I encourage everyone to do. When you read the Maccabees, it doesn't have the same stuff that our Bible has. And here's what I mean by that. By stuff, I mean the Apocrypha, a lot of it is what we would call in the church theology of glory, that if you're powerful enough, if you're big enough, if you're good enough, then God will bless you. Like that's all those scriptures in the Apocrypha are just steeped in that. They're just steeped in that. One of our books of the Bible that comes close to that is Joshua. Joshua sounds very, very similar to that, but there's some golden threads through Joshua that really that make you ask the question, is this working? Judges also kind of has a feeling of that, but there's also a golden thread through Judges. It's like, is all of this actually working? Is there anything being accomplished here? And so the Apocrypha kind of reads like that, and I think that's why it's not in the Protestant. I wanted to say Christian, but I was like, that's not right. the Protestant Bibles. I kind of think it should be in our Protestant Bibles. Because I think if we had a proper understanding of how we could read the Apocrypha, it would probably help us read the rest of Scripture. Because I think a very dangerous trait inside of Protestant Christianity right now is looking at one or two verses and going, oh, that's God's word for me right now. And oftentimes that stuff is taken out of the context and things like that. And I think if you understood how to read the Apocrypha and see how God is working through those stories, I think you better understand how God is working through the stories all throughout the Scriptures. So that's my thing. But I'm weird. Remember that. At some point, I'm going to get kicked out of all this stuff. That's you gotta remember, like that there's gonna be like Harrison and all of his little mustached buddies are gonna come out with pitchforks and stuff like that and like kill the beast, right? And stuff like that at some point. That means I'd have to be more important than I am right now for them to come after me. So that I think is why the Apocrypha isn't in there. And that's why I think it's important to know. I knew nothing about the story of the Maccabees until 7 years ago. 7 years ago. I was already out of seminary. I remember them talking about it a little bit in seminary, but as soon as you hear that story, it's everywhere. It's everywhere because everyone wants Jesus. As soon as they think Jesus is the Messiah, they're like, oh, the Maccabees are happening again. Because just 100 years before Jesus, they were successful. They kicked out Alexander the Great out of the temple. They kicked Zeus out of the temple. They still celebrate that to this day. It's Jewish Christmas, right? Like that. That's incredibly offensive what I just said, but I think it's funny. But it's it's an important thing to make. And so those overtones would be spilling over into even this story. So by saying it like it's being said, Ed, to your point, even the demons are recognizing him and calling out who he is. But in a Jewish sense, for a first century Jew, Mark is using Messiah language to say that Jesus is important, even in this story. And so with the fact that the pigs and he's around the Gentiles, these people who are worshiping emperors. And so I think that is fascinating. So let's see, we talked about that for a long time. And so let's talk about the guy. And to end it, this guy with a legion of demons who's in a Gentile region, Jesus kicks out the demons, and I think that man is the definition of bad soil, and Jesus makes bad soil good to keep the story going, you know. And so let's see, and the pigs go in the water. I had never even thought about that before. Yeah, like that's I had never even thought about that before, Cheryl. That's a cool overtone that I've just missed, even though I talk about water constantly. Yeah. Yeah. So she's saying that it's almost like it's like evil going to evil, kind of evil to evil, that the pigs going down, the demons taking the pigs into the water. That's cool. That's cool. I'd never thought of that before. I'll probably be talking about that and stuff like that. That's good. That's good stuff. Okay, so then let's talk about the end of the story. So I'll read again 18 to 20. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon possessed begged to go with him. Interesting verbiage here. But Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis, which would have been like the big central, that would have been where they played the Roman games and, all the, like, think of Gladiator type of thing, except just smaller Colosseum. The Decapolis, and how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. I think what's interesting here, so let's ask this question before we go forward. What's different about what Jesus tells this guy than he tells the other people that have wanted to follow Jesus, and he tells them no?
The others, the other people, he had just said to not tell them what he had done.
Yeah, total silence, right? So this one it's different. It's different. And those people disobeyed Jesus. So either Jesus is learning, like, well, they're just going to say stuff, or maybe the fact that he's in a Gentile region, and he's like, just go back, like, you'll be all right.
Pastor, isn't it also almost a foretelling of Christ is for the Christians as well as the Jews?
Yeah.
Because he did not save him because he wasn't a Jew.
Yeah. And so I do think this is foretelling that. There was something I learned. So this week's Sunday sermon is about the expansive nature of God's kingdom. So I was kind of studying all this stuff, and I found out something interesting about the word Gentile. We get our English term gene from Gentile, like the genome type of thing. Gentile, like we separate Gentile. We don't translate Gentile, is what I'm saying. What Gentile means is the nations. So you have Jews and the nations. Okay? And that was new to me this time. I kind of always knew that, but I never realized it was that explicit. So what's happening when we say Gentile, we're not translating it out of Hebrew or Greek or whatever. And so it's literally like, so think of like the genome. So genome, it's the same root word. So Gentile is the nations, like, and by nations, they translate nations differently than how we do. We think of like the U.S., Mexico, Canada, all that stuff. It's not just that. It's like all the peoples. And the reason why I'm making a big deal out of it is I just didn't realize it was that explicit. That it was just an untranslated word that we were saying. So when you hear Gentiles, you got to think outside in the nation. So when it's going into the region of the Gerasenes, people are thinking it's like, oh, that's those other people, those other people groups. And this guy wants to come in and follow Jesus, and Jesus is like, no, stay where you are. And he then he told his story. And he told his story. And I think that the idea that he told his story, I think is important there. And that's something that like when I talk about evangelism and things like that, I'm big on the story language of he told his story, you know? And so he went out and everyone was amazed. And so I think that is kind of this interesting idea about him. Jesus didn't tell him, like, don't tell anyone, stay with the dead, right? Like, no, he's like no, go back to the Decapolis. And that's where the story is different. And I kind of wonder if it's because this man from the nations, and he wasn't Jewish, that Jesus told him to do that, because that's where it is kind of different. I don't know. Does anyone have any other opinions about that? So when we're actually, so our section here, so I'm answering Gloria's question without saying what it was. She said, she said, now when Jesus sends out his disciples, does he send them out to Gentile regions as well? And I'm blanking on that right now. What I do know is that it's what happens right after our section of going through Jesus turning bad things into good. Suddenly he sends the disciples out. I'm blanking on the Gentile regions. Let's see here. I'm on it right now. They drove out many demons and anointed. It doesn't say.
It does. It says make disciples of all, doesn't it?
It says he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits. Take nothing for your journey, wear sandals. So it doesn't say anything explicitly. In Mark, it doesn't. It might in one of the others. Yeah. So that's probably why I'm not remembering anything, you know. And so that probably assumes they probably stayed in Jewish regions. Which would have made sense for them, but that's, yeah. So that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. So anything else? Anything else for this section? Yeah, 15 minutes. So Gloria just asked, do I think that people have impure spirits in them like they did back then? I think, so I have, there's a couple big theologians that I trust, and a few of them have had personal experiences with things that they have seen that they can't really explain. And so I tend to listen to them in all those things, and seeing people do stuff that they're not cool with. Yeah. So I think that there is that. I also I do because it's going to be hard to ever get me to say no on something like that in the world, because for me to say a definitive no, I'm relying just on myself for the information that I'm believing. And I have attained enough education now where I'm not going to see everything that I know and trust, you know, that it relies on other people. So I haven't seen too much like that, but I have had some weird stuff happen to me, and I can't really explain that. Let me see if I can creep you guys out real quick. I remember when I was, I don't know, probably 15 or something like that. I had a dream where I was fighting the devil. I was like punching him and stuff like that. And I was fighting the devil, and I guess I messed up on some fisticuff moves or something like that. And I saw him, and he was about to hit me, and I woke up, and I felt something hit my chest, and I fell off the bed. I can't explain that. That's I don't know what's going on there, but you got to
You have them all
understand.
the time.
Coley says she lives with two different people. One of them is called Sleepy Chris, and Sleepy Chris is a different person. So who knows what is going on with Sleepy Chris? So do I believe that? Yeah, like and I think that stuff has a lot more power in especially in more like you go out in the middle of Africa or in the bush or in those, and that has much more. I think those types of powers are used much more subtly nowadays. I think those powers are used today to erode our confidence in our fellow man now, to erode confidence in what's kind of going on around us so that we will just curl in on ourselves further. So I think like the strong notion of conspiracy theories right now is that in how those divide families and divide all of that stuff. I think those are satanic bridges type of thing that are coming in there. And I think anyone that is bringing about life to those conspiracy theories would be regarded as like an antichrist, somebody is not bringing people together type of thing. So I could be wrong about that. So it's but that's so I think and I think that's how evil manifests itself in a media savvy, media literate, together community like we have in the West. So that's I think that's some of it. So but yeah, that's kind of what that's my opinion. I could be wrong. But so
going back to the question about are people demon possessed or have bad spirits? Isn't that all part of the sinful human nature?
So yeah, I think it is. The Gospels explicitly make a distinction between those that have like a demon possession, and so I would be cautious about going, you all have evil spirits in you, type of thing like that. Where I would definitely say that we all do evil on our own account. Like with the sinfulness and things like that. I think that is there, but I still think that it can still happen to this day. We'll creep you guys out some more. So you guys know the story of the Exorcist, like that movie and that book and all that stuff. So that's based on a true story, right? Yes,
No.
It's based on a true story. And that it wasn't a girl, it was actually a boy. It was actually a boy, and that family was LCMS Lutheran.
Wow.
They took the boy to the seminary because they lived in around St. Louis area. They took him to the seminary to exorcise the demon out of him. They didn't know what was going on. And the lore is, like, we're all getting into seminary lore now, okay? Like this is all stuff like this, is that they put the boy on a chair. They put the boy on a chair in the middle of this one small chapel that's mysteriously not used anymore. That's on this chapel, and the boy on the chair would be hopping while he was on there. This is all lore, but these were our history professor told us this. All right, so that's any kind of thing. And he's actually one of the candidates to be president of the seminary right now, Gerhard Bodie. And so he said that he was pupping, and then one of the Preußes was president at the time, and that he would take the boy off the chair and try to make the chair do that himself, and he wasn't able to. The seminary was unable to exorcise the demon, so the family then went to the Catholic Church, and that's where the story begins that you guys know. Of the exorcist. So the that stuff I still think can happen to this day, but it's I think also that we can have faith and hope that Jesus can turn bad soil into good, right? And all of those things. Did your history
professor have any explanation as to why the LCMS could not exorcise the demon?
I don't know. No, he didn't. I think so. I think we're getting into fun stuff, aren't we, Kevin? Kevin came in here just laughing. You knew these stories though, didn't you, Kevin?
No, I didn't hear that one.
Oh, you haven't heard that one before. Okay, so
That's the seminary story.
the seminary story, right?
I only made it as far as Concordia Stewart.
Yeah, he didn't make it. He didn't make it all the way. So it's not real well known. So the Catholic Church takes exorcism seriously, and we really don't. And so that's I think that could be some of it. And so
there are specifically trained priests that handle an exorcism. It cannot be done by just your local parish.
Yeah, so they have people on the payroll that's their job. And so it's that could be some of it. They're also, St. Louis is a big Catholic town, and their Jesuit school is a big Jesuit Catholic town, and the Jesuits are also kind of a lot of the exorcism priests come from the Jesuit side of the Catholic faith, and so it's so I don't have any good answers for you on that, Ed. I don't have any good answers for you. I can only tell you about what I've heard and all of that stuff. But that's just me thinking out loud. I would say it's because the Catholic Church takes it seriously. And so that's, and I think they have the power to take it seriously. They're global, and they have priests in places that we don't, and
They have more money.
yeah, and they have, because they're global like that, they have, they're going to have more of a understood tradition than all that. As far as Lutheran pastors go, I'm probably more apologetic towards the Catholics than most, because they're the church. They mess up just like the rest of us, but they've been around for 2,000 years. And so that's so they have a history, and they have an understanding of the history that sometimes we don't have.
Talking about their money.
Yeah.
At one time, if you know the history of the area, a good part of Hutchinson Island was owned by the Catholic Church.
Oh, was it? Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So I don't have a good answer for the demon possession that's happening now. Like, I do think it's around. I think evil attacks us in different ways than it would in other parts of the world, because we have a tendency to explain things away a little bit more. I also think that some of the possession in the Bible could be explained by other things that we would explain them by. So I think it's back and forth. And the sheer fact, so even if someone was mentally struggling in Jesus' day and they said that he was possessed by a demon, And the fact that Jesus heals him, I don't think takes away any of the power of the healing. Okay? That doesn't take any power of the healing away. But for the writer that's writing this, it's important for us to recognize that the writer is writing it as a demon possession. So they are putting it into an overarching narrative of good and versus evil, triumphing over that stuff. And that's important to understand the narrative in here. So there's a lot of things going on in all this stuff. And it's a lot of balls that you have to have in the air. But as soon as you get comfortable with those balls in the air, like you're just fine doing. It's like a juggler being able to hold a conversation, right? So as soon as you get them all up there and you're like, oh, okay, like this, like I get it. Then you can start seeing like Cheryl making the connection with the water. Like that's suddenly you're like, oh, I'm seeing it in other places. And then the water becomes a fun connection because then you start connecting it to baptism. And you're just like, oh, look at this. Look at this. Like, so we're actually going into the depths of death and chaos and rising in new life, with baptism. And so it then becomes this whole thing. It's all the more meaningful. So we didn't really talk very, very long on any of this. So we got onto demon possession. so that's what. Does anyone else have any other questions or anything that I can inadequately answer about demon possession? So Gloria just asked, do I think we're too casual about Satan's influence? So I think that's a twofold answer for me. Because I do think we tend to be casual about evil, but also I think we always need to be careful about saying the devil made me do it type of idea, where it's like, oh man, just evil made me do this, where we stop taking responsibility for ourselves. And also I think just being aware enough of recognizing that just as humanity can do some really messed up things to people. And I think you don't have to go very far to start seeing that, where people, talk to social workers, talk to, the police, talk to stuff like that. And you could see kind of how messed up humanity can be. And I think it goes back to what Ed was talking about with that being part of this, that sinful nature. But what's interesting is that even when people are being heinous like that and acting in very evil ways, and maybe even as a messenger of evil or something like that, like as a fear act of being a human, you have dignity of the Creator in you, even when you're being heinous. So it's all, again, it's like having all those balls in the air, and it's difficult. But I think our job as Christians are realizing that even when I've been a scoundrel, to quote Luther, when I've been awful, that Jesus still came, died, rose again, and redeemed and is redeeming me. And that there's really nothing that I have brought forth to make that happen. So when we realize that about ourselves, then I think that gives us eyes of grace to be able to look at other people, even when they're being nasty, in the same way. And that's why I think like the thing of Satan often tries to give us eyes to see the worst in people rather than seeing the best. And that when we look at people with eyes of fear and that they're going to take something from us, that I don't think we're looking at them with God eyes. And so that's kind of why I said that. So because we've been shown grace, and we can show grace to others then. So yeah. Anything else? Well, it's great seeing everyone. Interesting discussion today. Interesting discussion. It's free flowing Advent, I guess. Like it's good. We're just going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. But may God, may God richly bless and keep you all, and His scriptures would be continually to be opened up to you. Have peace in His name. Amen.